Well, greetings and thanks for joining us for another episode of Lightbulb Moments. We're glad you're with us today, whether you're joining us live, whether you're watching a YouTube recording of this or the podcast. Thanks for being with us. And thanks for spending your precious ATM with us, the three currencies we have in life: attention, time, and money, but no money required. I want to give a shout out to a couple of our sponsors, Lightheart Sanders, the CPA firm. They've been what I'd call a legacy sponsor. They've been sponsored this forum for about 3 years, 3 of the 5 years. I can't believe that this is the month of the 5th anniversary of Lightbulb Moments. Anyway, I digress. I also want to acknowledge Zenoti, who is also a sponsor of this forum, so thanks for that. We are recording this on May 14th, 2025, which is on the eve of the 4th annual Phil Conference for the second year in a row in partnership with the University of Texas, Austin, where we're going to feature some of the most amazing professors, executive education specialists, et cetera, from the McCombs School of Business, hosted on the University of Texas campus. Can't wait, super excited about it. And it's really where our mind is at today. But it's not the only place our mind is at today. Our mind is also today is on data and research and how that can really fuel insights, which can fuel action. And so today I have with us today, and I will welcome to the mic and the camera, Steve Reiss, who is from Pivot Point International. Steve is a data guy. It's maybe not maybe the exact best summary of Steve. Steve, you've been industry veteran for many years, but certainly you've been passionate about data throughout your career. And now you head up within Pivot Point, the data and research division, I believe. And so we're pleased you're with us today, Steve. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me, Tom. I always enjoy our conversations, and it's going to be very interesting because this is going to be one that we're sharing with lots of people.
I love it. Okay, so just to do a little bit of a level set here, for those of our listeners that don't know, we have a partnership with Pivot Point that goes back to the very beginning of our launch of Money EDU, which is our financial training and literacy program for students. In fact, we awarded Robert Passage the Golden Light Bulb a year ago because it was his idea actually to curate a financial literacy program. Fast forward to today, and together with Pivot Point, we have touched over 50,000 students, given them financial related training, so they'll have the financial skills that will match their art and heart. So now, Steve, you at Pivot Point, you're pumping out several research papers and white papers, et cetera. And I think today we're going to speak primarily about some of the recent wellness studies that you've done. Sound good?
Perfect.
So why don't you give us just a general outline of these 2 wellness studies, which I did have time since we spoke, which I think was a couple of days ago, to go through them, read them. Super interesting, super relevant, super compelling. So give us just an overall synopsis of just what the studies are, and then we'll dive in with some of the findings.
Well, first of all, hello to everybody. I'm sure I already know a lot of the people who are going to be listening in. And those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet yet, I hope I have the opportunity to interact in the future. There's really kind of a story behind the wellness research. And my history in the industry has always been very, very much related to data and very, very much related to research. And when I was at Modern Salon, we did a lot of both. I actually, and I'm not sure most people know this, I actually went to school for a year, a few years ago, right during the pandemic, where I got a certificate program from Northwestern related to data. So it was something I was always very, very interested in. Pivot Point does a lot of data and research analysis internally. And that's really to inform the types of programs and services we provide, such as the program we do with Tom. But we really decided that as a corporate citizen, what we needed to do was really focus on what are the larger issues our industry is facing that maybe aren't getting the attention they deserve from a research perspective, because there are no dollars and cents necessarily attached. And I know, Tom, you're involved in the same sort of work. One of the first things we did was we did research related to how education has changed post-pandemic. And part of the reason we did this was we wanted to know, but every single person we spoke to, and Pivot Point's very interesting in that we're very involved in both the school market and in the professional market. Everyone was saying, here's what we're doing, what are other people doing? And we started talking about what are all the differences in our world? What's the new normal? And the fast forward is there is no new normal. It's an ongoing reset. But what does the world look like? And what are the things we are really thinking about? One of the things that came out of it was there was a huge gap between the generations. And the gap was exacerbated by COVID, by rapid technology adoption, which really shifted a lot of power to younger people at the expense of older people. And based on that, we decided to do some research on the generations. And when we did research on the generations, one of the things that really jumped out at us was wellness, because the generations had a completely different approach to wellness. And Tom, you and I are of the generation where, walk it off, figure it out. But younger people have tools at their disposal. They're connected in a way they never were before. They want to address these things. And one of the bigger challenges that we were having in our industry, and we did wellness, and we then did follow-up wellness research, which is my long way of getting there, for both the professional space, but also the school space, was that the fact that wellness wasn't necessarily being acknowledged as a key challenge, and it doesn't only affect young people, it affects everybody, was a critical challenge that the industry was facing. So as with all challenges, you want to jump in with both feet and figure out, do I really understand this? What do I need to know? Who are the people we need to talk to? And then based on that, what are the types of things we should be thinking about and ultimately doing? And that really led to the wellness white papers. So I guess the point is that you can focus on one thing or another thing, but everything informs everything else. And ultimately, we're looking at the overall health of the industry, and this was something which just was a challenge.
I'm looking away from the screen for those of you that are seeing the visual, not because I'm texting, because I downloaded these reports. They're actually on my phone. I read them last night. I looked at them again this morning, and there's really some super interesting findings out of there. And some of these, and I'll let you speak to them, but in a nutshell, one of your studies suggested that 91% of respondents were faced with at least one wellness-related challenge related to a variety of factors. So kudos to you. And I think that the way you described it, Steve, is that, one study creates curiosity that leads to another study, essentially. Is that maybe the direction that you're talking about, how you led into the wellness area? Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the more you learn, in a sense, almost the less you know, because you realize here are all these other things I just don't know a lot about. And I think one of the great motivations of the human spirit is curiosity. And I know Leo Passage, who founded Pivot Point, was a big believer in being curious. So I think all of us in the industry lean towards that because we're very people oriented. We want to help and we want to give back. That's what sets this industry apart, and that kind of defines the journey you take.
So let's go through some of the findings. So there was two studies. One of them was more for students and instructors, and related to, so the title is, first one is Prioritizing Wellness and Beauty Education, which is student success and instructor retention. And then the second one, which we'll start with the second one, is Prioritizing Wellness and Beauty Insights from the Professional Beauty Community. Do you want to go through some of the key findings from the one that related more to the, not necessarily to students and instructors?
So in the pro space, one of the things we know about people in the salon industry is they're people pleasers. We've all heard the term psychosmetologists. We're very, very involved in people's lives. And while that's a wonderful thing, it also takes a toll on people in our industry because we don't say no. We always want to help. So we had already suspected that there were challenges. What we really wanted to do was get a better sense of what these types of challenges were and how big a problem they were. So we really looked at all dimensions of wellness. So one dimension is going to be your mental health, your relationships with people, stress, things like that. Another is going to be your financial health, because your financial health, and this is what you work on, Tom, directly impacts your mental health. If you aren't making money or feel like you don't know how to make money or are stressed in terms of making money, that's really going to affect your relationships, not only with the people you work with your family, your friends, what's critically important. But then we also wanted to make sure we understood other things and how big an issue they were, and it was physical health. And when I was at Modern Salon, we actually had a program called Healthy Hairdresser, which was mind, spirit, and business. No, mind, body, and business. And, one of the things we found was that a significant percentage of people in this industry had physical challenges, primarily related to standing on your feet and circulatory issues, or carpal tunnel syndrome, or repetitive motion types of things. And that was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And in this research, again, that came up as a challenge. But then there are also other things that we wanted to explore, like physical safety.
Yeah, this is a big one. Talk to our listeners about this.
So at Pivot Point, we have a very good understanding of what's important to the people in the beauty industry, and we want to be as supportive as we can. So we've gotten involved in projects that provide information and resources on diversity, on texture, on sustainability. We got involved with a group which was really providing domestic violence support for people in the salon industry. And one of the things which we had heard anecdotally, but it never really had measured, was that people in the salon industry may be more willing to stay in an abusive relationship because they're people who are always forgiving other people, who are making excuses for other people. So the very qualities which define our industry and make it full of so many wonderful people perhaps works against it. And I don't have the studies in front of me, Tom, but I think that what came out was that I think it was 9% of 9% of the salon professionals had physical safety issues.
Well, then you did a little math, and I was like, okay, well, let's turn 9% into number of people.
Yeah, one of the challenges in this industry, and this is something that you're actually doing a very, very good job addressing, is we don't have a lot of good data. So if somebody said to me exactly how many professional stylists are there, it would be hard to say, because are we including people who work on cruise ships? And are we including people who go to college dorms and cut hair? Are we including people who work 10 hours a week? Where does it begin and end? But if we just throwing out a number, say there are 1 million active stylists at any given time, that means that there are 90,000 people, according to our study, who might be facing these types of situations. And that's a significant number.
Yeah, that caused a pause when, not that the 9%, but when you put it into 90,000 people, and even if our math is off, because as you say, no one really knows how many people are in the industry. Let's say it's even half of that. which it's more than that, but we're talking 45, 50,000 people, that's huge. That's a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call for me. So this is really important research. You brought my attention to, and I'm looking at the graph here, that come into financial, it was, I believe, if I'm looking at this right, 36% list financial issues as a mental health challenge. Wow. That's a significant percent. So
It's very interesting because when we did the post-pandemic education research, two topics came out as things where people really needed help. The first was texture, and we're in a multicultural society, and a lot of older stylists and more experienced stylists haven't had a lot of experience with it. It wasn't taught in beauty school. They don't really understand it. And that's something they want to focus on. The number two topic, though, not far behind, was financial health. And as somebody at a big company said to me recently, if a stylist isn't able to make a living, they're not a good customer. And that's not a bad thing to say. I mean, it's just being honest. If we're not making money, and I know the focus of your business is making sure that people in this industry make money more effectively, it's hard to do anything well.
Shout out to Pivot Point, because you mentioned some of the research we're doing, and Pivot Point's been a really great sponsor of some of our research projects, and we're very grateful for that. I mean, it really is a catalyst to certainly our compensation studies. And after talking to you, I went back into some of the data that we don't really share very much, but I'm going to share some of this with you. And Steve, you might not know some of this, but since we started working with students 4 years ago, we survey every student. Well, not every student, but we have 7,296 responses from students. And I'm going to share with you some of the findings. That's almost 7,300 students over a period of several years. On a 1 to 10 basis, the average person rates them a 5.5 out of 10 in financial confidence. The average students says their level of financial literacy they feel is a 4.9, which, by the way, in an academic scoring system, as Aaron says, who's most intimately involved in this program, that's an F. And then 5,000 out of the 7,400, that's 68%, feel fear or dread when thinking about money. The first word that they think of when it comes to money is stress, by far. 77% had no formal financial education training. 51% are not confident they can make, save, and manage money. And so I don't know, you're kind of reawakening the health aspect of financial, management and literacy and all of that. So,
part of it is the type of people who are drawn to our careers. The type of people who are drawn to our careers are people, they like interacting with people, they want to give back, they want to be part of something, they're creative, they're artistic, a whole host of things like that. And I'm not going to make a big picture generalization here, but I'd say that compared to other people getting out of high school, for example, they may view money as a necessary evil. I know very few people who got into this industry because they wanted to make boatloads of money. I know that there are a lot of people who go to college because they want to make boatloads of money. And if I have to have a career that I don't particularly like or want to do, but it gets me the boatloads of money, well, that's my trade-off. But that's not what really seems to motivate most people in this industry. And that's part of the challenge. It's very interesting because we did a technology research project at Modern Salon a long time ago. And we asked stylists, do you consider yourself tech savvy? And they almost all said, no, that's the guy who works in the office, tech savvy. But then when we started asking about specific behaviors, they were really sophisticated in their use of a lot of technology, specifically social media. So they really were tech savvy, but they didn't think of themselves as that way. And at that point in time, perhaps 10 years ago, perhaps there was a negative connotation with it. And maybe that's the way some of the people in our industry feel about money, that I wish I didn't have to worry about it. And now, unfortunately, I do.
Something else that came out of these 7,300 responses was 89% identified with them being visual learners. And that's really not how financial management's been taught. I mean, it's been taught with spreadsheets, a lot of text, a lot of numbers, and it leans into a lack of confidence. So I'm looking at the wellness report here, and I was looking at so what mental and physical health challenges do you personally face? The highest percent, that was 51%, was work-life balance, followed by stress management and burnout. And then third, it was industry-related health issues. So just having that sit in a little bit. Any comments about that?
Well, the work-life balance, that shows up across the board as the biggest challenge. And I actually have a personal story I can share, which happened before I was in this industry. But then after I've been in this industry about 4 or 5 months, I suddenly remembered this, and all of a sudden I understood the industry. And I was in my early 30s, and I was dating a woman who owned a hair salon. And we had planned a big night out and had tickets to see the Rolling Stones. And we had bought these tickets 3, 4 months in advance. About 3 hours before the concert, she called me and said, "I'm really sorry, I can't go." And I said, "Why can't you go?" And she said, "Well, I have to deal with an illness." So I said, "Who in your family is sick?" She goes, "Well, it's not my family. One of my customers, her mother just went to the emergency room, and I want to go with my customer, and I want to give her support." And, at that time, to my young guy mind, it's like, wait a second, it's not even a member of your family. And this is the Rolling Stones. But it was years and years later when I remember that, and I was in the industry, when all of a sudden I got it. And in my mind, that defines this industry. And that's the best thing about this industry. And in a lot of ways, it's the most challenging thing about this industry.
Good story, Steve. Yeah. What'd you end up doing? Did you end up going solo?
No, I mean, I had a Rolling Stones ticket. I could find a friend to go with
Yeah,
it
I'm
at
sure.
the moment, but I was disappointed. But
Well,
I get it now.
back to that work-life balance thing, I just, so in the last 3 years, our compensation studies have looked at number of hours worked. And going back 20 years, it's never been over 28 hours a week. In recent years, it's declined.
Well,
And
actually, Tom, can I jump in?
sure.
So we did research, and this is probably 15 or 18 years ago, and we found that the average, and this was really research we did on rental versus commission. We found that in commission salons, it was about 38 hours. But then we did more research and we found it went down to 32 hours. And now my understanding is it's in the 20s.
Yeah.
So before rental got really, really big, my sense was that there was more investment in that one job. But we live in a gig economy now, and especially with younger people, they want to structure their life differently. They definitely don't want to be in the 9 to 5 world. They may want to work at night or work afternoons or something. And they may have 2 or 3 other things going on where they're making money, which are more passion projects.
Yeah. So give you some recent data points. So the most recent comp study we did was chains, and all the big employers had averaged 24 hours a week. And then the year before that, we did for 1 to 10 locations, it was 26 hours. And the year before that, it was 28 hours. So I think you connected a dot for me. The cynical part of me is like, well, wait a minute. Working 24, 26 hours a week, that offers tremendous opportunity for work-life balance. But what you're suggesting is that that time is filled with other things. I hate the whole thing about someone having a second job in the beauty industry. Why do you need a second job? So,
It's not necessarily a second job. It might be something they happen to be interested in. They may be painting, they may be in a band.
sure.
We also know from other research we've done that our industry has a lot of single mothers.
Yeah, yeah, yep. So other things from the study here. So financial, that was, I think, 36%. And I might have already said that, but they consider that to be a mental health challenge. And then so have social and emotional challenges affected your work? 38% decreased motivation or concentration at work. 27% said conflicts with clients. 26% said conflicts with peers. So, boy, it matters for employers, right? I mean, this is an issue that affects all of us. So,
Well, think about, when you're stressed and you go home, you take it out on people. I mean, you can't help yourself in some cases. Now, what exacerbates this is that if you look at our community and the people who've come through COVID, where they didn't learn a lot of soft skills, they didn't have as much face-to-face in terms of how to work things out. Um, it's a challenge. Plus, the different generations have very, very different expectations about how to do things, how to communicate, assumptions about how things should be. Uh, and again, that whole generational divide was exacerbated, and is much broader than it's ever been. I mean, if you think about generations used to last 20, 30 years. Now generations are happening pretty quickly. And as mentioned, there is a shift in the power dynamic. In a world increasingly relying on technology, it's given a lot more power to younger people who might not have the life experience or business experience as the older person. And they have to figure out how to work together in kind of a new power dynamic. And that's very, very challenging. And that's probably very frustrating. And then if they're not making money, it makes it that much worse.
right. Is there anything from the other study, the one that related with students and instructors, that you want to highlight before we move up into wrap?
Yeah, this affects everything. So the generational divide is something that schools really need to be thinking about in terms of how they're teaching their students, how the instructors are interacting with them, use of devices in class, how they talk about social media and influencers and a whole host of other things. Plus, all of a sudden, so much of the education is online, and it used to be mostly all in person. So again, you have that shifting power dynamic. If you're an instructor, you're used to a hierarchical world where what you said was, here's what's happening. Now you have people who are saying, well, on my phone, this person's doing it differently. And it's not anybody being disrespectful as much as I've grown up in a world with immediate access to as much information as I need. And this is just the way I deal with things. So there are a lot of challenges. One of the biggest challenges in beauty schools right now is they don't have enough instructors. So it's critically important that their instructors feel comfortable to retain them. And they're dealing with financial challenges, they're dealing with generational challenges, they're trying to manage a classroom, they're trying to handle technology. So from the instructor side and the administrator side, there are things to really be thinking about. From the student side, uh, it's so difficult for young people who are busy defining who they are and what they're going to be at this transitional point in their life, whether when they're in a new environment with new people, with social media, with all these different things, and maybe with some challenges with their instructors as well. One of the things that came up was that a lot of students have problems outside the classroom and they bring them into the school. So you're not only an instructor, you're kind of a caregiver as well. And one of the things we found was that within the school environment, a lot of students were having challenges with the other students. Maybe they felt bullied, things like that. And the problem is that a significant percentage of them said, you know what, I don't know if I want to stick with this. I don't know if I want to do with this. And again, I'm part of an older generation, which is you just put your head down and you go through that because we didn't have a lot of options. I wanted to watch cartoons on TV. I had to get up at Saturday morning. That's when they were. People have grown up in a world with lots and lots of options, and maybe they're just saying, you know, I'm not going to stick this out. And one of the big challenges we have in this industry, and I'll go back to another research project we did, was a lot of people leave this industry in the first few years or don't graduate beauty school or don't take their exams or things like that. What we found based on research is that the people who work more or less a full-time schedule and stuck in this industry 5 years had a significantly higher level of career satisfaction than they thought their friends and their family did. The challenge is, how do we transition people over to that point where they're in the industry, they've got their roots down, they paid their dues, and now they can go out and be successful. And that's why, you know, what you're doing with your financial literacy program in the school is so critically important, because now we know based on research that if they don't understand their money and how to use their money, it's going to be much, much more difficult for them to be successful.
Well said. So this is good stuff, Steve. I just put in the chat the link to where at Pivot Point you can access this research. We will also put it on our client hub so that people can consume this. It's good stuff. We love the work you're doing, Steve. You're a good man. We appreciate you and the partnership with Pivot Point. Bravo to you. And thanks for really bringing my attention back to the whole mental health topic. It really was a very hot topic like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you know, post-pandemic. And what happens is we move on to other challenges we have in life and, you know, other issues that come up, but it hasn't gone away and it won't go away. So thank you for the research you're doing. It's a very well-written report. And let's everybody give Steve a virtual round of applause. Give him a little shout out in the chat. Steve, I don't know, this will probably be your second $1 million light bulb, so we'll make sure that you have that for your collection. You remember the Brain Trust. Well, thanks for the great work you're doing, Steve, and for joining us today.
Okay, and Tom, thank you and your team for the partnership with Pivot Point. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. For those of you that are listening to this or viewing this before the fill, hope to see you there. If not, we're going to celebrate the fill for our next episode. And again, thanks to a great partnership with Pivot Point and Steve. And we have a data deficit in this industry, and Steve and Pivot Point are doing a great job of trying to narrow the deficit, whether it's the research that they do and also or the support that they're providing to the Community Institute. So shout out to all of you. Have a great rest of the week. And thanks for joining us.